Hi everyone, welcome to this lecture about the second part on asymmetric information. In this lecture, I will talk about moral hazard. It's a second type of asymmetric information, which again is going to lead to market failure. I'm going to explain how this happens on the market, and I will of course make the distinction between adverse selection and moral hazard. First, the usual disclaimer. I do not allow this content to be published without my consent. If I see this content uploaded online, I will take it out and report whoever uploaded it. Let's start with the definition of adverse selection. Moral hazard. Moral hazard in economics refers to the outcome of a situation where one or several agents make hidden actions that are unobservable to other agents. The definition follows the same format as the one for adverse selection, but this time the expression I emphasized is not hidden knowledge, but rather hidden actions. This is the fundamental difference between these two phenomena. There is asymmetric information, its source is going to be different, and it will also lead to a market failure through a different mechanism. So, moral hazard is about taking some actions that are not going to be observed by the other side of a contract. Let me give you a couple of examples. A worker's effort is not directly observable. So, when a worker is on the job, most of the time, his or her efforts are hardly observable. There are, of course, some kinds of jobs where the employer can directly see how hard the employee is working. But for many jobs, the employer is not directly monitoring the employee's actions. We can observe the result of the workers, as in we can observe how much they produce. You can count this, but you don't know how hard they worked to get to that level of production. So, for all the employer knows, the worker could shirk, which means be lazy, and still achieve a good result. Sometimes it happens. Without working too hard, things work out pretty well. A driver can decide to be careful or not. The insurance company has no way to check whether the driver is driving in a very careful way or in a careless way. Is he speeding up on the highway? Is he paying attention to the traffic lights, to pedestrians around him, and so on? The insurance company has no way to monitor that. An unemployed person's effort to find a job is not directly observable to the unemployment benefits provider. When a person is unemployed but still looking for a job, this person is entitled to receive unemployment benefits. This measure, unemployment benefits, is used to give enough time to unemployed people to find a job that fits their preferences, skills, and so on. Imagine that you lose your job today. It is August 9th right now. Imagine you have to pay rent next month and you don't have enough money to pay rent. Well, in a panic, you will accept any job that comes in your way. So you'll go to Starbucks, Tim Hortons, McDonald's, any job that is easy to obtain as long as it can pay the bills. If you get unemployment benefits, which can represent sometimes 80%, I believe, or maybe 60 to 80% of your former wage, then you can pay your bills without immediately finding a job, which gives you more time to relax, but also to look for a better fit. The efforts to find a job are not directly observable, though. Although the unemployment benefit provider often asks a proof that the worker is actively looking for a job, the rest of the efforts are not directly observable. So, for all we know, or for all the government knows, this unemployed person could just send 2 resumes a day on LinkedIn, literally just send them, which takes 15 minutes with a couple of emails, and say, well, I've been actively looking for a job. Look, I sent resumes. The government doesn't know if sending these resumes took 10 minutes or maybe 10 hours because there was a lot of preparation behind. Tailoring the resumes to the different jobs, maybe making customized cover letters, and so on and so forth. So how does that information asymmetry differ from adverse selection? In adverse selection, the source of asymmetry is exogenous. So agents are of a certain type ex ante. Ex ante means before signing the contract. And this type is not something that can change. They are either the bad driver type or the good driver type, or the high ability worker, the smart type of worker, or the low ability worker. They could be the safe type of borrower or the risky type of borrower. But here we are talking about something related to the nature of the agent. It is not something the agent can change. That's in his genetics, if you like. So exogenous means it comes from outside. It's exterior. It's something that is fixed, that the agent has no control over. The agent happens to be comfortable in a car. He's a good driver. He's not comfortable in a car. He's a bad driver. He's a smoker or he's a non-smoker. That can have an influence, of course, on the insurance premium if the insurance company knew. It's the same as the qualities of the car. The car that sellers are trying to sell is either a lemon or a peach. No way to change that. With moral hazard, the source of asymmetry is endogenous. It comes from within, inside. Agents choose to do or not do an action that is unobservable. So, drivers, for instance, could be the same ex ante. They could both be good drivers or both be bad drivers, but they might choose to behave in a different way when it comes to driving. So you could have a driver that decides to drive safe or to drive risky. This driver could be a bad driver in the first place or a good driver in the first place. That would be the adverse selection part. The moral hazard part is how do they decide to behave? Which is why we say endogenous. It comes from within. It is something they decide. Workers could also be the same ex ante. It could be both. We could have 2 low ability workers or 2 high ability workers, but they might behave differently on the workplace. One of them might decide to work hard, the other one might decide to not work hard at all. So their actions happen ex post, after signing the contract, pre-post. And this is the main difference. In both of these situations, something is not observed by the other side of the contract. The insurance company, or the bank, or the employer, or the government, and so on. So, to put ideas in perspective, I want to talk about moral hazard in the case of the insurance market. Then from there, I will go into the general moral hazard model in agency relationships. So moral hazard is the increased risk, that's the hazard part of the term, of a bad or immoral behavior due to being insured against the negative consequences of such behavior. Let me give you a couple of examples. Those are empirical facts that we observe. Fire insurance results in more arson. Arson means to set things on fire. So, as houses get insured against fire, we observe more houses being burnt down. Now, you could come up with at least 2 different stories which are both related to moral hazard. You could probably come up with more. The first one is knowing that the house is insured against fire. Homeowners might be less careful about leaving the gas stove on or things like that, which might maybe lead to the house burning down. So knowing that they have a safety net, knowing that the insurance company is going to repay for the amount of the loss or some part of the loss makes agents more careless. A second reason could be, well, knowing that they're going to get this money back, they might decide to set the house on fire on purpose to get that money and kind of run away with money in their pockets. That also is a moral hazard behavior. Knowing that they will get all the money back, they are behaving the bad way. Insurance against theft and accidents decreases precaution. You can apply the same reasoning as fire insurance on cars. Knowing that your car is insured and any valuable inside the car is insured, some drivers are less careful and they might not lock their car, which result in theft or maybe accidents. Unemployment insurance decreases job search. Knowing that you're going to get paid without having to work for a certain amount of time, you might decide to kind of cruise and enjoy life for a little. I know people who do this exact thing. For 6 months a year they work, and the remaining 6 months, when it comes to summertime, they enjoy unemployment benefits because they know they can go back to their job 6 months later. Actions are not observable. If they were observable, the contract or the insurance coverage could be contingent on action and moral hazard could be avoided. That sounds barbaric, that sounds fancy. It's actually very easy to understand. If you know how much effort your customer is putting into his health or his driving or in looking for a job, if you know exactly how much effort he's putting, then you can make the contract depend on the effort. And you can say, well, if you get a fine, or if I know that you're driving above the speed limit, then I'm going to increase the insurance premium. I'm going to make you pay more. If I know that you're looking actively for a job, I'm going to give you the amount of your full wage from before you got unemployed. But if you're not putting a lot of effort to find a job, then I'm only going to pay you half as the government. So if there was no asymmetric information, then the side of the contract that doesn't observe actions, well, if he does observe actions, he can make the contract depend on what he sees. However, in general, we do not see that. So an indirect way of punishing bad behavior to make sure that somebody is not behaving the bad way is to decrease the coverage. You propose less than full insurance. This way, a driver, for instance, knows that if he is being careless on the road, he might get into an accident, and if he gets into an accident, he doesn't get the full amount of the loss paid back to him. So he will end up with less money after an accident. That should give him incentives to not be too careless. So, proposing less than full insurance provides better incentives, but the outcome is inefficient because we expose the agent to risk in order for him or her to behave well. If you offer full insurance to your customer is going to use that and maybe go to the doctor more than he should, even if he doesn't need to. He says, oh, I don't care, I'm getting the money back, which is costly to the insurance company. Same, they might decide to drive carelessly because being careful is costly, it's annoying. They'll say, whatever, if I have an accident, the insurance company will pay back for the repairs. It's all good. So imagine the insurance company offers full insurance. It means that after signing the contract, the driver's income is the same regardless whether he gets into an accident or not. Either he doesn't get into an accident, he paid the insurance premium, but his car is intact, so he has the full value of his car, or he pays the insurance premium, but he gets into an accident, the car suffers some damages, but the insurance company repays the driver for the full amount of the loss. So at the end of the day, the driver will end up with the same amount of money whether he gets into an accident or not. And this is where the trick is. If it doesn't matter, then a driver for whom it is costly to drive carefully will not drive carefully. Instead, he will prefer to be reckless. The idea is that full insurance is removing the risk for the driver. So the driver doesn't have any incentives to be safe. And the driver cannot tell the insurance company, believe me, I'm going to drive safe. Because nobody will ever tell to an insurance company, that they are going to speed up on a highway. Nobody wants to say that. It's the same as saying, I am selling very bad quality products. No firm will tell you that. So it's impossible for you to believe a firm that tells you, oh, I'm selling good things. Well, of course, nobody's going to say they sell bad things. Same here. So the insurer cannot believe such a commitment. Now, let's talk about moral hazard in the more general case of agency. The insurance market I just talked about is just a special case of it. In general, moral hazard problems arise in agency relationships where parties sign an agreement or contract, but there are going to be two specific things happening. The first one is that the parties have diverging interests. What one wants is not what the other wants. An example, if you sign a contract to work for your employer will probably want you to work hard. You don't want to work hard because working hard is costly, it's annoying. However, you want to get paid as much as possible. The employer, however, wants to pay you as little as possible because your wage represents a cost to your employer. So you sign a contract, but you do not have the same incentives. And the second feature is that some actions are not observable. So there is going to be some information asymmetry. And because of that, after signing the contract, one party will have opportunistic behavior. They will have incentives to behave their own way, the way they want, which is not the way the other party wants them to behave. For instance, an employee will want to not work hard and still get paid, which is the opposite of what the employer wants from the worker. So there's a need for incentives and, well, in particular, monetary incentives based on observable indicators. The employer needs to find a way to pay the agent or to insure the agent in such a way that the agent will want to behave the right way. And We can set up incentives, non-monetary but also monetary incentives, based on things that both the employer and the employee, or the insurance company and the driver, observe. A couple of examples. Think about a performance-based pay in employment. You do not necessarily know how hard your employees are working. They could be on social media all day. You don't really know. They are in the office. Nobody's looking over their work. So instead, you could pay them based on their performance. And the performance could be based on sales, profits, output, anything that is observed by the employer. So the employer could think, well, I'm going to pay you high if you give me high profits. You could get me high profits by working hard or not, but as long as my profits are high, I'm going to pay you high. If my profits are low, I'm going to pay you low. As easy as that. Commissions are a great way for employers to make sure their employees are going to work hard. Many jobs involve a salary based on commission. Sometimes there's a fixed base salary, which is a minimum wage, and then the rest is going to be a commission in the form of a percentage of the sales made. Clothing stores typically pay their employees on commission. And this is why you have so many employees in clothing stores coming to you as soon as you step a foot in the door. Hi, good afternoon, how are you? How may I help you today? Is there anything you're looking for? Let me know if you need me to look for another size. All these things. Well, this is because if they manage to make you buy, then a percentage of the sale is going to go to their wage. You probably have seen also employees that sometimes give you advice, and once you say, oh, I'm going to take this piece of clothing, they tell you, okay, so once you get to the cashier, tell them that you were advised by Sabrina or Brian or whatever. And you can check on a receipt that there was a you've been served by and the name of the employee. This is not for you to know. This is for the employer to know so that they can compute commissions at the end of the month. Some jobs are entirely based on commission. So if a worker decides not to be proactive and sell by just staying in his corner folding some clothes, he will not get paid. So this is the best incentive to work hard. If you don't work hard in this case, you don't get paid. Deductibles in insurance. In insurance, there is this option called a deductible that consists in an amount of money that a driver has to pay if he gets in an accident. So he pays the insurance premium at the beginning of the year, no matter what happens during the year. If he gets into an accident, he will get some coverage back, but he will have to pay a certain amount of money to the insurance company. This way, even if insurance is full, after paying the deductible in the case of an accident, the driver will not end up with the same amount of income as if no accident happens. This is a way to expose the driver to risk, and this deductible is based on something observable, which is if the driver got into an accident. Because if the driver gets into an accident, he will file papers, he will file a claim, and the insurance company will just see, oh well, he got into a car accident. He's going to have to pay the deductible. Stock option plans in corporate governance. Many executive positions in big firms, higher ups, managers, regional managers, branch manager, CFO, CEO, those positions usually include not only a base wage, but also stock option plans. Those are plans that consist in offering stocks of the company at a discounted price to the worker. So the worker can buy stocks of his own firm, and, well, if he wants to increase the value of his stocks, he's going to have to work hard. That's especially the case for higher positions, where when you're a CEO, for instance, well, your decisions are going to have an impact on the profits of the firm, which in turn will have an impact on the value of the stock. It is not so the case if you are just a salesman in a regional store, where just your sales will not have a huge impact on the overall profits of the firm, which in this case won't have an impact on the price of the stock. So sometimes employees are offered this kind of stock option plans, like a discount on the stocks of the company. But usually it's higher positions that benefit from maybe actually a free stocks or a highly discounted price. For professional athletes and lawyers, we can actually set the performance based on, well, for athletes, we can see the amount of victories or medals or positions in championship or tournaments, competitions in general. And for lawyers, we can assess the performance of a lawyer based on the cases they win. So whenever an athlete is doing well in terms of performance, we can give him a bonus pay on top of his base wage as a way to motivate him more. For lawyers, same thing. Lawyers can maybe perceive a bonus based on the number of cases they solved and they won at the end of the year to give them an incentive to work even harder. To give you an example for athletes, in fighting, and I'm thinking about MMA, like the UFC, kickboxing, boxing, often after a fight, the promotion, the organization that organizes the fights, gives bonuses to reward the best fight of the night, the best knockout of the night, the best submission of the night, and so on and so forth. To give you an idea, right now at the UFC, a fighting bonus is equal to $75,000. So if you happen to fight hard, offer a great performance, many rounds, a lot of fighting, a lot of back and forth, a very entertaining fight, you might get $75,000 on top of what you got paid to fight. If you KO your opponent, same. You might get a $75,000 bonus. That is an extra incentive for you to work hard in the ring. And I'm pretty sure that athletes in the NBA, NFL, MLB, and so on also get bonuses at the end of the season based on how many points they scored, how many games they played, and so on and so forth. So let's go over a model of hidden action. We have a principal, P, that hires an agent A. So hires here is a general vague term, and the word principal and agent are vague as well. Any agency relationship in economics is also called a principal-agent relationship or principal-agent model. The principal is the one writing the contract. The agent is the one signing the contract. So to give you an example here, imagine a principal in the form of a shareholder. So it is one of the owners of the company who doesn't work at the company, only owns some stocks. The shareholder hires an agent. In this case, that could be a CEO, CFO, or a manager of some sort. The agent is going to be called A, to work on a project on her behalf. So the shareholder is like, okay, I have this money, I need somebody to work on this project. The return from the project isn't certain. It could be either a success or a failure. I am simplifying things a lot here. I'm just making it binary, success or failure, whereas usually there would be a continuum of output levels or profit levels. The agent can exert an unobservable effort but it is costly to him. So I'm going to assume something very simple here. The agent can either exert a lot of effort or no effort. Easy. And again, in real life, there is a continuum of possible efforts. Being very lazy, a bit lazy, working a medium amount, hard, very hard, insanely hard. You could make as many categories as you want. Another assumption is that if the agent works hard, the project is successful with a higher probability than if he is lazy. That is also an assumption that makes sense. When somebody works hard, there is a higher chance of high profits or a success. Obviously, the principal prefers success to failure. And in this case, he will want the agent to work hard. I will talk about this later. It is not always the case. Let's, like in the market for lemons, go over different information structures. In the first one, we assume perfect information, where everything is observable. We see everything. So in this case, effort is observable. So the principal, the shareholder, knows how hard the agent is working. In this case, the principal can use an input-based performance schemes. Input is like labor, capital, and so on. So effort is an input. The principal can then pay the agent based on whether he works hard or not. Not on the result, like the profits or the failure or the success, but based on how hard he works. And the wage could be something like the employer pays a nice wage if the agent worked hard, but nothing otherwise. Well, in this case, the agent will work hard if the wage is good enough to sign the contract. You have to think about opportunity costs of signing the contract. After all, the manager, the agent, might prefer to work somewhere else, so he might not sign the contract. So the employer needs to make sure he signs the contract, but once he signed the contract can say, well, you're going to get a nice pay if you work hard, but if you don't work hard, and I know whether you work hard or not, I am not paying you at all. It's a pretty cutthroat performance scheme, but this way, the agent will never decide to shirk. That's the perfect information case. It is efficient. The agent accepts as long as the contract is better than what he could do somewhere else, and he works hard. Now, let's go over the second information structure. There will be only two here, as opposed to three in the case of adverse selection. If you remember, in adverse selection, I went over the case of perfect information, imperfect information but symmetric, where nobody knows the type of car that is being sold, and the case of asymmetric information, where only one side of the market knows what the quality of the car is. So, here, since the agent decides how much effort to put, there is no point in looking at the second case. The second case says nobody knows anything. Well, a worker who decides to work hard knows if he is working hard. He might not know his type, but that's the adverse selection part. So it doesn't make sense to have the second information structure here. So let me move on to the third one directly. Imperfect and asymmetric information. Hidden action case. So the agent is paid a wage, which is possibly contingent on effort or project outcome. It just depends on what's observable. But here, I am assuming that effort is unobservable. So the wage cannot depend on how hard the agent works, because simply the principal has no way to tell. he doesn't know if the agent works hard or not, so he cannot pay him based on that. Rather, he can pay him a fixed wage. But if he pays him a fixed wage, the agent is getting paid the same whether he works hard or not. So what do you think he's going to do? The minimum. Why does he need to work hard if he's getting paid the same amount? And a fixed wage acts like full insurance. Think about it. No matter what happens, no matter the level of profits, no matter the amount of efforts the agent is putting into his work, he's getting paid the same wage. So, why would he exert a costly effort? Why would he provide effort when providing efforts is annoying? He's getting paid the same. Just show up at the office, do the minimum. No need to work overtime, no need to, just do the minimum to get paid. So, what I mentioned before was that insurance is a broader concept here. This is the idea that the agent is not subject to risk, is not exposed to risk in his pay. If his pay is not risky, as in it will be the same no matter what, no incentive to provide efforts. So a fixed salary gives no incentives. The agent will not work hard, but be lazy. And more generally, the agent not bearing any risk results in moral hazard. Same as full insurance against fire, same as unemployment benefits given to you without any condition, and so on. Obviously, the principal here is not able to provide the right incentives, so he has to propose a different type of contract. We saw in previous examples that things like commissions, piece rates, bonuses, deductibles in insurance markets could be used to expose the agent to some risk. So, because effort is not observable but output is, or profits are observable, then the wage can depend on what is observable. So the principal could tell the agent, I'm going to pay you a high wage if the project is a success, but I'm going to pay you a low wage if the project is a failure. Whether it's a success or a failure is something that everybody can observe. How hard the agent works for it is not observed by the principal. So, what the agent is going to do in his head is compare his expected utility by working hard versus not working hard. Remember, if he works hard, there is a higher probability of a success, and there is a higher probability then of getting a nice wage. So, on one hand, providing efforts is annoying and costly. On the other hand, a success is more likely, and so a high pay is going to be more likely. So the agent is going to compare the potential wage he can make with the effort he has to provide. If this expected utility is higher than not providing effort and get paid, it could also be high, remember? Even by not working hard, the project could be a success. So then the agent will decide whether he works hard or not based on this potential contract. It is also possible that at the end of the day, he decides to work hard, but the project still ends up in a failure, so he might still get a low wage. And that's the gamble here. He could work hard, but might still get paid a low wage. He could be lazy and still get paid a high wage. So this is the risk that the agent is exposed to. So in general, a variable pay, bonuses, piece rates, Your wage could be based on what you produce per piece. You get paid per piece. Profit shares. You could maybe get a certain percentage of the profits made. Deductibles for insurance are ways to solve the moral hazard problem. These are ways to expose the agent to risk and to make him behave the way the principal wants him to behave. It is inefficient risk-bearing because it's necessary to make the agent work hard, but it is inefficient because if information was perfect, we would not need to expose the agent to risk. You work hard, I pay you a lot. You don't work hard, I don't pay you. There is no risk here. As long as the agent works hard, he gets paid the high amount. Here, there is a probability that even by working hard, he gets paid a low wage because the project fails. So let me go over the general problem. I mentioned earlier that the principal wanted the agent to work hard, but in reality, the principal might not always want that to happen. Think about it. If you want to make your employee work hard, you have to pay him more. But how much you have to pay him compared to how much profits he can bring might not be a good deal compared to paying him a low amount and he doesn't provide any effort. If I need to pay you $1 million to work hard, I might prefer you to not work hard and I can pay you minimum wage. Right? So, the firm, the principal, the employer, the insurance company, faces a two-stage decision problem. There are two things a firm needs to take into account. First, how much does the firm need to pay its employee for each level of effort it wants him to exert? Well, if I don't want my employee to work hard, I pay him minimum wage. That will do. But if I want him to work hard, I need to pay him more. So first of all, for each level of effort, how much do I need to pay him? First thing. Then second, what level of effort is going to maximize my expected profits? If he doesn't work hard on one hand, the probability of a success will be smaller, but I won't have to pay him a lot. So there is a trade-off. On the other hand, if he works hard, he might bring high profits with a good probability, but at the same time, I might have to pay him a lot for that. And maybe the expected profits are higher or lower if you want your agent to work hard. So, first, how much do I need to pay you to work hard versus not hard? Second, what do I want you to do? Do I want you to work hard or not? Given what I have to pay you in each case, maybe my profits will be higher if I let you be lazy. And there are many jobs like that. Think about McDonald's. McDonald's could pay you on the number of burgers you produce. Sure. But at the end of the day, the burgers you produce only depends on the number of customers who want burgers. So there's no point in producing more burgers than needed. So if McDonald's pays you per burger, then you might decide to produce way more burgers than needed, which leads to a loss for McDonald's. So McDonald's instead can say, no, just make a burger when it's needed, when a customer wants that burger. So in this case, you get paid minimum wage. You do your minimum amount of work, which is make a burger when a burger is needed. So it's not always obvious that the principal wants the agent to work hard or, in general, provide efforts. So, let me summarize all of that. Moral hazard problems emerge if the parties to an agreement have diverging interests, they do not want the same thing, In general, they want the opposite, actually. And at the same time, some actions are not observable by one party of the agreement. Potential solutions are then based on what's observable in the form of monetary incentives. You pay somebody based on how much profits he brings you, or you pay him a bonus if you see that he's doing well in one form or another. It could also be indirect monetary incentive, like a promotion. It could be a promise. You could tell your new worker, well, we are a fast-paced firm. If you work well, we are going to promote you within 1 or 2 years. So maybe you might not get paid high right now, but if you do a good work, within a year, you're going to get a promotion and you're going to get paid more. Or it could be deductible. And deductible is not a way to reward you if you behave well, but it's a way to penalize you, to punish you if you behave bad. So that's the thing. You can use two different ways. You can reward good behavior. You did well, I'm going to give you a bonus. Or you can punish bad behavior. You did not do well, I'm going to give you a penalty. I'm going to take money from you, or I'm going to pay you less. We could also solve this problem if, well, there was no information asymmetry in the first place. By monitoring actions, then the principal might be able to base the contract on input, on effort. For instance, the principal could hire an IT guy who looks at what everybody does on their computers at the office. If they see that the employee is spending too much time on YouTube or social media and so on, then they might say, well, I saw that you only worked 6 hours today instead of 8. You came to the office for 8 hours, but there are 2 big hours where you were not working at all. You were on YouTube watching funny videos. So I'm going to pay you for only 6 hours. Monitoring of actions is costly. You need to have somebody to check after somebody else. You need an IT guy, for instance, to look at the history of navigation of all of the employees. That's costly, but it's possible. Penalties and fines in law enforcement. Think about parking lots in downtown any city in the world. Parking spots are not free in general. You have to pay for them. And they're not always controlled. There is not always policemen or cops or of the sorts that verify that people pay for the parking. So you might decide to not pay for parking, hoping that you don't get fined because nobody's going to control that. But every now and then, cops, of course, control that and will give you a fine. Of course, you will look at the probability of getting a fine versus paying for parking every day. But if parking every day costs you $10 and cops only check that parking spot maybe once a week and a fine is equal to $35, then you might make the math in your head and think, I would not pay for parking for the whole week, get a fine every now and then, like $35, which is still cheaper than paying for parking $10 a day, 5 days a week. Fines in law enforcement is another way to monitor actions. There is also a thing called transfer of ownership. I talked about it in the previous tutorial, and we'll talk about it again in this tutorial about moral hazard. Companies can sometimes only keep a fixed amount of the profits made on a project, for instance, and leave all of the rest of the money to the agent. It is a typical way to remunerate cab drivers. Cab drivers pay a fixed fee to their employer to be able to use the car that has the name on it, the phone number, and so on. They pay a fixed fee, like a rent, and any money they make after paying the rent goes directly to their pockets. So if they decide to work an extra hour, the money made on that hour is entirely going to their pockets. So that gives them an incentive to be on the road as much as possible, which is beneficial to the company because, well, seeing a cab driving around all day or maybe all night is a very good promotion tool. You have the yellow cab or the black cab with the name on it, with the phone number on it, and the more people see that cab in particular, the more they're going to think, oh well, there's this cab I can call. I know this company because I see them around all the time. There could also be repeated interactions. So think about implicit contracts. Working with the same people every day might give you this implicit relationship where, well, you have expectations of your colleagues and colleagues have expectations of your work and expect you to provide a certain amount of work. The promise of a promotion is also an implicit contract. It's only a promise. They might not promote you, but that might be sufficient for you to provide efforts. Again, the outcome may still be inefficient because each of these solutions are exposing the agent to risk. Let me finish with another distinction between moral hazard and adverse selection. Same as before. Adverse selection is about hidden information, which comes from the costs of distinguishing among individuals with different characteristics. The good versus the bad driver. The smart versus the non-smart student. The healthy versus the unhealthy customer. But it's in their genes. It is not something they can change. With moral hazard, it's about the choices that agents are going to make after signing the contract. So that arises from the costs of measuring and controlling different behavior of individuals. A driver might decide to be risky or to be safe. An employer or an employee, might decide to work hard or not. Whether he's smart or not, doesn't matter. He might decide to work hard or not. Well, both problems cause market failure. I hope that by now I convinced you of that. And in reality, things are pretty complicated. We have both problems interacting with each other. Think about a driver. Ex ante, the driver could be good or bad. That's just in his nature. But on top of that, the driver might decide to be careful or not. So now you end up with not 2 different cases, but 4 cases. A good driver who decides to be safe, a good driver who decides to be careless, a bad driver that decides to be safe, and a bad driver that decides to be careless. 4 possible types of people. Same as a worker. It could be a productive worker that works hard, a productive worker that doesn't work hard because, he's productive, he knows he's going to get the job done, so he's a bit lazy about it. Or a non-productive worker who works hard, maybe to compensate for his lack of talent or skill. Or a bad worker, just non-productive worker who doesn't work hard. In these lectures, I made the distinction between the 2 problems to see where the market failure is coming from in each case. But in real life, we always end up with both. You can have naturally healthy people, good genes, never sick, never any weight problems, no diabetes, no allergies, that decide to stay healthy after being injured. But you have the ones who are naturally healthy, but decide to go a bit crazy because they are injured. And on the other hand, you have the not so healthy people to start with that keep being unhealthy, don't do anything to change that. Or you have the unhealthy people who are careful about their health because they care. Which dominates will of course depend on the circumstances. So, over the course of this whole course, we broke a couple of perfect competition conditions every time and see how this affected the market equilibrium outcome. First thing, we broke the price taking behavior. We violated this assumption by assuming a monopolist. So a price-making situation instead of a price-taking situation. We went over the case of deadweight of a monopolist and saw that there is a deadweight loss. We then talked about externalities and public goods, which are specific cases that also can lead to a market failure, as in the outcome is not Pareto efficient anymore. I quickly talked about different types of goods in tutorials, where goods are not homogeneous. Because they're not homogeneous, firms have market power. And because they have market power, again, the price or the quantities will not be competitive. And I talked about the information structure. We violated the condition of perfect information and see where that led. There are other conditions for perfect competition that I did not talk about in length, which once violated also lead to a market failure. I hope that these two lectures about adverse selection and moral hazard help you understand why this kind of contract are being proposed to agents, why warranties are proposed on goods, what is the objective behind a warranty, what is the objective behind advertising, behind lineups, what is the value of signaling, how can it be used, and how do education institutions use their reputation as a way to increase the tuition fees, because their reputation can be used as a signal for students to get a better job or a better deal once they get a new job. That's it for this lecture on asymmetric information. Have a good rest of your week, and well, maybe not see you in the next one, but have a good one. Let's say that. Bye.